Well, I appreciate you being here today, and I think it's hopefully will be a worthwhile time together. And this week and next week are intended to do two things. One, to help us all understand leadership better as leaders in the church and what that means. And then next week we're going to look even more specifically at the role of elder and deacon in the church and what that means. But leadership is the umbrella that doesn't matter what your title is in the church. If we don't understand what leadership is, just having a title is not going to make it happen. So that's kind of the thought behind this and where we're going to go with this. So we have a special guest today. Many of you know the chief. I asked him to come and share just leadership in general. You know, as we were talking this week, leadership is leadership. Whether it's in the church, whether it's in a business, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it's in your family, there are certain principles of leadership that are universal. And Chief, how many years you've been chief? It's been seven years. And I've had the opportunity, the privilege of serving as the chaplain in the fire department, and I've seen his leadership in the department and what a difference he's made. And so I asked him to come today and share from his perspective what leadership is, and then gave you some handouts. I'm going to share some stuff after he's done. So that's kind of where we're headed. I'm going to start off with prayer and then turn it over to the chief. Lord, we thank you today for our opportunity to gather together, and thank you for the privilege we have of being leaders here in the church, in our homes, in the community. And Lord, I pray that we'll always be a leader that others look at and they see you and your qualities and characteristics in our lives. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, Chief, why don't you go ahead and...
Do you want to put that on?
Yeah, why don't you clip this on and stand up here just for production quality here.
Okay.
Why don't you do it on the other ear? If it's curved better that way.
Okay. This is a first for me. Thank you.
Do you need a stand?
No, I can just I have some notes and stuff here. So. Okay, I'm destroying everything here, but that's okay.
Just put it.
Yeah, there you go. So, good morning. First, I wanted to say that leadership is not about you. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about the people who you lead. That's what leadership is, initially. And I'm going to read my bio that I wrote myself, that people normally read. So when I say it's not about you, I'm going to make this about me right now. So, Chief Joseph Daigle has been a resident of Florida since 1976. The United States Marine Corps war veteran, Desert Storm, served in a tank battalion that provided the initial breach through the minefields and charged through Kuwait. Chief Daigle served as the citizens of Bonita Springs firefighter in 1993. He began his career as a probationary firefighter, advanced through the ranks, firefighter, lieutenant, captain, deputy chief, assistant chief, to his current position, chief. He is currently state-certified EMT paramedic, has been awarded the designation of Certified District Manager from the Florida State University, Florida Association of Special Districts. I earned an associate's degree of science in fire science from Edison College, a bachelor's of science in public administration from Barry, a master's of science in organizational leadership from Columbia Southern University, awarded the District Manager of the Year for the state of Florida in 2014, the Medal of Honor for commanding Hurricane Irma operations. I functioned in the capacity of fire company officer, division supervisor, incident commander, and various command positions during numerous emergencies throughout my 27-year career now in Bonita Springs, almost 27, throughout Lee County. I served 5 years as a Secretary of Treasurer for the Lee County Fire Chiefs Association. And my interests are military strategies of all ages, world history, and philosophy. So when we talk about leadership, the first thing, like I mentioned before, is it is not about us. It is not about you, the leaders. It's about the people that you lead. The first thing in my history that I know is you have to love the people you lead. You have to love them. That is the most important thing, is when you lead people, you have to have a affinity towards love. When I was in the Marine Corps, there was a couple circumstances. I joined the Marine Corps at a young age. I was not I never wanted to be a leader in my life. Never. It was never I didn't aspire to be some kind of leader. When I played football, I didn't aspire to be the captain of the football team. Somebody else made me the captain. The coach made me the captain of the football team. I didn't want, when I was in the Marine Corps, I did not want to be a squad leader. I didn't want it. All I wanted to do was do my job the best that I could. And my drill instructor and my platoon sergeant made me a squad leader. I didn't ask to be a lieutenant in the fire department. I didn't ask to be the chief of the fire. I didn't want to be the chief of the fire department. The people pushed that upon me. When I say they pushed it upon me, it wasn't. My aspirations were not to be a leader in any phase of my life. So I think that certain people aspire to be leaders and certain people don't aspire to be leaders, and it's thrust upon them. I've always said in my fire department career that there's three things that I would retire over. Number one is if the troops did not want me to be their chief, I would leave. If the Union, meaning the troops, if they said, we do not want you as our chief anymore, you would have no argument from me. I would leave. I would retire and go find something else to do. Because how can you lead somebody if they don't want you to be their leader? You cannot do it. It's impossible to do. The other thing was, if I became ineffective at my job, being a leader to me is not sticking it out. It's not an attrition thing. It's you have to be wanted to be a leader. You have to have, in my experience, you have to have the people that you're leading accept you as their leader and as a peer. It's the burden of command is one of those things where you're not asking for it. You're not trying to achieve that. It's something that is thrust upon you. From a real leadership perspective, the way I view things. There's always there's a fork in the road. Many times I tell the firefighters, and I know this is a church thing, but I have to discuss what I know, which is fire department. There's always a fork in the road. There's always, you can either choose, and I tell firefighters when I hire firefighters, I tell them this. I said, you're either going to go one way or you're going to go another. I've hired and fired several people, but when you determine, you look at somebody, this is what I did. I looked at somebody and said, I want to be like him. He is a good representative of what I want to be. And there's a fork in the road. You can either go one way or the other, just like spirituality or anything else. You can go one way or you can go the other. I tell them, I said, you pick somebody that you want to be like, a mentor, and you follow that mentor's path. That's what I did. I had a mentor, Chief Kinsey. You probably remember, obviously Chief Kinsey, but he was my mentor. He was a firefighter when I got hired, and as the mentorship went through, I followed him, and he was the chief. I happened to pick the right guy, and I just did exactly what he did, and he was my personal mentor. And I knew that I wanted to be like him. You can want to be a rebel, or you can be a groundbreaker, for instance. One of my experiences in the Marine Corps is very interesting. How you have like leaderships for titles, and then you have leadership from like a de facto leader. In the Marine Corps, I was a de facto leader. I mean, I wasn't, I had no rank. In fact, I'll tell you, this is an interesting story. I was up for a combat promotion. Combat promotion. 1 in 100,000, they were going to give me a promotion, for duties in combat. And I was a rebel at the time, and I was known as, basically the rebel. I fought the power, for example. And I was one of a very select few. I think there was five guys that were up for a combat promotion in the desert. And I had to sit in front of the major, the colonel, and everybody else in the desert. They were sitting in chairs in the desert, and I'm standing in the desert. Well, I cut my pants off into shorts, stood there in boots and shorts, because what was more important to me was that the troops thought that I did not lose my rebel de facto leader title. So I made a mockery of the whole thing myself, and I did not get the promotion. Somebody else got it. It was dumb at the time. I mean, when I look back, it was stupid. I should have, stood up there. But it was more important for me to have the reputation as a rebellious Marine than it was to get a promotion, because I had a following. I had a strong following. Even my first sergeant, he liked me so much, he tore up my resignation papers. Well, my discharge papers. He's like, "You're not getting out. No way. You're not getting out. You're staying here, because we need Marines like you." And he was from Vietnam. He did 3 tours in Vietnam, and I was like, I got to get out because I got to do something else. But the point is I was a de facto leader in a situation, and I could have got a promotion, and somebody else got it, but it was more important for me to have the troops behind me, the people that I was kind of leading, I guess you'd say. That was part of my history, and I learned from that. It was a stupid thing to do, really. It was dumb, because I probably could have accomplished more if I would have got promoted. I could have led people more effectively had I had the authoritarian title, with the ability to make changes. A lot of times in leadership, from my experience, you have to have... I found in the fire department, use an example, I found in the fire department, everything is not always going to be kosher. Everything's not always going to be fine. You always have to have examples of good and examples of bad. If you don't have examples of bad, then you will never know what good is. From my experience, for example, like I said, I love the firefighters. I do love them. But the thing about it to me is you have to get... I'll give you an example. We had a firefighter who was terrible, breaking all the rules, not doing anything. He grew his hair long. He had long hair, and I changed the policy to make it everybody has to have kind of a military haircut. Well, he was so intense about keeping his long hair that he claimed that he was a transgender. So we went through the whole court system to go through the system and make sure that he got his rights. He was rightfully, how do you say it? He was rightfully allotted his due as a transgender. Most people didn't believe him, but it was the end of the end for him. He was going to get fired unless he cut his hair, but he decided that he was going to claim he was a transgender. And he may or may not be, I don't know, I'm not judging that. But the point was, he was at the end of his rope, and he was a total troublemaker, and then finally, what happened was, He had to go to the extreme of doing whatever it was he did, it, rightfully so or not. But you know what he does now? Follows the rules. He comes to work on time. He's not a problem anymore. He's a transgender, according to him. He's a transgender, and that's fine, as long as he follows the rules. So we had an example, and people were like, okay, well, I don't want to do that. You know, you have to make examples of what's good behavior, what's bad behavior. And in my history, I've known, you know, even for example, I use people that I have fired, for lack of a better term. These recruits, and they're young kids. They come up, they want to be firefighters. I always say I would hope that I create an environment in the fire department where, same as the church, that everybody has the same experience I have had. Meaning that my family's taken care of, there's a lot of love, people love to come to work, people love to do their job. The fire department's taken care of me my whole life. And I want that for the recruits. I want them to understand what that means to them, like the church, what it means to you, what it has done for you, what Christ has done for you. You want to push that on them, and hopefully that they can get that experience. And you know, as the chief, when somebody does not follow the simple rules or make the changes in their life that they need to make to accomplish what needs to be accomplished to enjoy that. You know, it's not about, like I said, it's not about me, it's about the organization. There's good kids that I've had to fire, let go, that just could not make it. And it's not because of them personally, it's because I have a responsibility to every other firefighter on that whole department, that we hire the best, that we have people that fall in line with what our core beliefs are, what our core beliefs are. And if they can't fall in line with the core beliefs, then they don't fit. They may be a fireman somewhere else, but they're not going to be a firefighter for me, you know. And I say that because at the top, and you're all here because you're at the top, your attitude, whatever it is, my attitude filters down through the whole organization. It is leadership. When you're at the top, it filters down through the whole organization. There's no question about it. No question. As a leader, I expect certain things of my deputy chiefs and assistant chief, and the whole culture changes because of you, because of the leader. The entire makeup of an organization will change because of you. And you hear CEOs like of big giant companies and all, you know, Apple and everyone else, when the CEO changes, their stock will drop if the guy was a good CEO. The reason is because nobody knows what the culture is going to be. The culture, you know, and I can only speak for the fire department, is I'm a very strict boss. I'm very, very, very strict boss. He knows that. But I'm also a loving boss. And that's the culture that I want to create. We have to have specificity in the way we do things. It doesn't matter. My assistant chief, who's a great guy, if he doesn't follow the culture that I set, if I don't lead by example, and he doesn't send that down, then the bottom firefighter is not going to get it either. It's the same thing with the church. You know, it's so difficult to lead by example. It is so difficult in my experience, because I don't always do it. I mean, I've not led by example several times. mean, it's embarrassing, but we're all human, you know, we're all human, so that kind of thing happens. But the bar that we set, like Christ, I mean, of course, his bar is way beyond anything else we know. But you know, I tend to have just my personal experience. I tend to have a you know, guilt or shame or all those things when I don't live up to that standard. You know, and the same thing happens in my small world of the fire department. You know, I find myself not necessarily doing what I would expect of firefighters doing all the time, I guess you'd say. But you know, there becomes a correction in which you know, you correct and you change. At least I try to do that. And I understand that firefighters are everybody has their own personal problems. Everybody has issues going on in their lives. Everybody has, you know, kids, family, wives, financial issues. So when I speak with the firefighters with love, I always give them as much of leeway as I possibly can, as long as they don't endanger the citizens or other firefighters. I'll tell you a story about my time in the Marine Corps. This was one of the greatest examples and it sticks in my mind of leadership that I've ever seen. My first sergeant Perez, the guy I told you did 3 tours in Vietnam. We were sitting out in the desert for months. This is after the war was over. We were, you know, clearing bunkers, doing all kinds of other crazy things. And first sergeant, we had a guy who his aspirations was to be a politician when he got out of the Marine Corps. Now he's a, you know, combat veteran. He wanted to be a politician. We're sitting out in the desert, so he went around and he was getting people to sign letters for his congressman so he could send a letter to the congressman to say, why are we still out here? We need to go home. We've been there for, you know, whatever it was, a year, you know. And he's like, we need to go home. The war was over for everybody else in America. You know, it was a 4-day war for everybody in America, but it wasn't over for us. We were still, you know, working, clearing bunkers, doing whatever we had to do. And so he was upset that we were still doing that. So he went around in the foxholes and everything, and he got everybody's signature. I signed it. I was 20. He's like, do you want to go home? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, sign right here because I'm going to send a letter to the congressman, and we're going to get us back home. So I signed it, and it's kind of emotional for me because it was a major change in my life. First Sergeant Perez was the nicest man you'd ever meet in your life. First sergeant. If you don't know in the military, a first sergeant is like the small g god of the Marine Corps when you're a troop. I mean, he's the man, and not an officer, but he's like a general, but on the enlisted side. And First Sergeant Perez was always such a nice man, you know, God-fearing man, Christian, and he used to always talk about, you know, spirituality and things like that, which was unusual for a man like him. Well, he got word that this was going around. He actually got the list. He got the list of people who signed it. This guy did 3 tours in Vietnam, and he got the list, and my name was on that list. And in combat, in war, you don't ever form people up into one formation because, you know, you could get the whole unit could get taken out, the whole, you know, company could get taken out. He formed everybody up in the desert, and we were all standing in formation, and he had the list, and I remember this, and he goes, I got the list of everybody here who signed this, who's crying, that wants to go home and wants to shuck their duties. I remember this. This is emotional for me because it was powerful from a leadership standpoint. He goes, I have not read this because I don't even want to see who signed this. He goes, I just know that this is the list. And he was a hero to us. And he took the list and he burned it. There was a fire. We had fires going back there, and he threw the list in the fire. And those kinds of things, as a leader, make you into the man you are. I'd never forget that. I'm an emotional person. You guys probably know that. I know. The chaplain knows that. But I will never forget that. And I was, I was so afraid that he saw my name on there. That was true leadership. I mean, to me, I was hoping. Sorry, when I talk about the war, I kind of get a little bit emotional about that, but that was true leadership to me, because I was so concerned about him seeing my name on that list. As a chaplain knows, that's why I usually try not to talk about those experiences. But it's an important lesson. It's an important lesson. It was one of the best lessons I ever learned in my life from leadership. So I try to do that as the chief. Try to burn the list, and I give this same talk when I talk to the. I use that same example, and it happens all the time. I get emotional about it when I talk to the lieutenants and the firefighters about leadership. We give classes, that sort of thing, and burn the list. If you're a real leader, you burn the list. You take. If you're a real leader, burning that list is more important than anything else. I would say, let me see how much time we got. Okay, we're good. The scale of leadership, it doesn't matter whether you're a general, doesn't matter whether you're a church leader, it doesn't matter. The scale of leadership is the same. I have to lead 5 people. That's it in the fire department. The chief of New York City has to lead 5 people. That's the span of control. That's it. But that culture, those 5 people, it all peels down to the bottom person. So whether the span of control is always 5 people. That's in at least in the military and also in the fire department. If you can control the culture of, and when I say control, if you can influence people to understand and follow you, you only have to do it with 5 people. That's it. Everybody else, they have 5, they have 5, they have 5, and that's the way it works. I feel confident I could be the chief of New York City. I really do, because I would only have to lead 5 people. That's it. But they would have to fall in line with what I have to say, and they'd have to be trustworthy. Loyalty is, from my experience, and the reason why I'm the chief is because I was loyal to the last chief. That's the whole. Like I said, I didn't want to be. I thought him and I were going to ride off in the sunset together. That was my plan. I didn't want to be chief. I was the assistant chief. I was like, I don't want to be chief. Don't like the job. Got to deal with politicians. And he decided he was going to retire, and I tell everybody, it wasn't because I was smarter than anybody, it wasn't because I had an education, it wasn't because of anything else, it's because I was loyal and I bought into his philosophy of the way the fire department should be. Same with the church. If you buy into the philosophy, if you get somebody to buy into the philosophy of what we're trying to do, meaning believe it, have faith in where we're going with this, those are the 5 people you want to spread the word and to push the education, or to push the agenda. I know we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to say that the number one thing that I have found in my experience in leadership, humility is absolutely paramount. But the number one thing is you got to love the people you lead. I mean, that is, if you don't love the people you lead, you got no business being a leader. You really don't. Because they put you there. They're the ones that count. It's not about you, like I said at the beginning. It's about the people you lead. And as soon as you make it about you, I'll step down, like I said before. If the firefighters don't want me as their chief, I'm gone. I'm out. They need to know that I love them. And I think that's important in the church too. You know, you love your congregation. You love the people that come in here unconditionally. You know, and I'll end with that. And if anybody has any questions, I'll certainly entertain that. So, thank you. Yes, sir.
On your illustration of burning the list, why was burning the list so significant? What did that say about him as a leader?
To me,
For the sake of the recording, will you repeat the question?
why was burning the list so important? Why was burning the list so important? To me, it represented that he was going to give. I mean, that was a big deal. I mean, you could go to jail for that. It represented to me that he was going to give us another chance. That his expectations, that we didn't know, we were ignorant of what we were doing, and he knew we were ignorant. You know, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And he burned the list, saying that it gave a great illustration of an understanding of what our commitment was to the Marine Corps, for God, Corps, and country, as they say in the Marine Corps. You know, that we had a commitment. And the second chance, really. And you realize we didn't realize the significance of what we did. You know, he showed us the significance of what we did, you know. And I didn't know. I was a dumb kid. You know. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Anything else? I wanted to thank you very much for allowing me to come chaplain here. I hope you got something out of it. I don't know. I had a PowerPoint and all kinds of other business, but you know, I figured it was a little more informal than that. So.
Welcome, stay for the rest if you got time. If not,
my wife and I, we don't get to see each other very often. We're both very busy, so I'm gonna go meet her for brunch.
okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot. She is. I'll guarantee that.
I can guarantee you that too. Have a wonderful wife. Thank you, gentlemen. I hope you got something out of it. Like I said, I really do. That's what I thought. All right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Here's your, back to you.
Clip. All right. All right. Thanks a lot.
See you tomorrow, AJ. You need a number of your wife or your daughter.
All right, bud. All right, good stuff. I'll say this, with the chief being here, I get to spend some time, as he says, with the troops, probably more than I do with the administration. And one thing that's kind of amazed me over the years, Chief, you need to hear this. I've never heard any of the guys on the force talk bad about the chief, which is pretty amazing because everybody has their own ideas of how things should be done. But that just says a lot about his leadership. And they do love him and follow him. So thank you. So, all right. Okay. I gave you two handouts, and what I wanted to share with you is kind of my heart on some things. As I thought about doing this, there's all kinds of leadership stuff out there I could give you. And there's all kinds of books, there's all kinds of tapes, there's all kinds of everything. But what I thought it would be good to share is kind of some things that I've observed from good leaders over the years, things I've learned, and things I've seen that make the most effective leaders. And Bruce Vanderkolk was one of my mentor leaders. Bruce, I think maybe he was a good leader here, but he was up in the church in Springfield where I was at. He was an elder there. He was a general in the National Guard. He was very high ranked in the state police department there in the state of Illinois. And yet he was one of the most humble guys that I've known. And he served. I went to Bruce one day and said, Bruce, I knew the state was going to Illinois. They were always coming up for early retirement so that they could try to save some money. I wouldn't go into all that because they ended up costing them more money. But I said, Bruce, this is after he's a general, after he is the commander of the Forensic Science Department in the state of Illinois through the state police. I said, Bruce, when are you going to do something significant with your life? Said, I've got a deal for you. Why don't you come to the church here, and I'll give you a desk and a lot of stuff to do, and you can be our church administrator. Just joking around, and he did. He resigned from the state when it came up and came on staff as our church administrator and did an amazing job. And so he was one of those guys. Well, he wrote this actually. I don't know if he wrote it for us, but back in 2010, I asked him to come down and share some stuff with the leadership here. And he wrote this thing called Leadership from the Farm, Leadership Lessons from the Farm. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I want you to read through it. And what he talks about is he grew up on a dairy farm in Michigan. And from observing how those cows functioned as a herd, he took some leadership lessons from that. And really, it was an amazing little article here on leadership lessons from the farm. Hope you'll take some time and read that, because some of those I'm going to make, some of those the chief made, and some of them were unique to him. So I encourage you to do that. Leadership lessons from the farm. And it is interesting what you can learn from nature when it comes to leadership. There was a church camp up in Springfield that we had. It was right there in Springfield, so it was real close and about 5 minutes from my house. And when I was dean for a lot of years there of high school camps and all kinds of different camps, and sometimes I'd be there early in the morning. You'd go out, and the lake was there, Lake Springfield, and every year flocks of Canadian geese would come into the lake and make that their stop-off point. And I was out one morning overlooking the big ball field, big open field going down to the lake, and there was a flock of geese that had landed there that morning. And it was interesting as I stood there and observed them that there were two geese that always had their heads up. And the rest of the geese, they're all just, doing their thing, looking for grubs or whatever they were looking for. But those two geese were definitely the leaders of the flock. If something happened that startled them, they would honk, and all the geese then would raise their head. When it was time to leave, they're the ones that took off first and led the way. And it's interesting. There needs to be a book on leadership lessons from nature, because it becomes natural. And this leadership from the farm is interesting as he shares that. So anyway, there's all kinds of things to learn about leadership. Here's some things that I observed. Some of the things that the chief already mentioned. But any organization, and I'm going to go to that handout that I gave you here, things that I've seen in effective leaders. First, we need to realize that the effectiveness of any organization rises or falls in leadership. Whether it's a small group, whether it's a large group, whether it's a company. Chief already talked about that. The CEO sets the culture for that. As leaders in the church, that's so true. We need to understand, as leaders in the church will rise or fall based on the leadership. how strong it is, how weak it is. It doesn't matter. It rises or falls. There is an episode here in the history of Anchor. I'll just share this because none of you were here at that time. I wasn't here. But here's my observation. There was an episode here in the history of Anchor where the founding minister had been here, did a great job starting the church. And his wife had a moral failure with a husband of the worship leader. And it was kind of a big scandal. And I've been told by people that everyone in town knew about it, and it seemed like everybody knew about it. Everybody in the church knew about it. And yet the leadership refused to deal with it. They didn't deal with it publicly. It was a very public situation, but the leadership failed to address it at all. And it split the church, really, in that half the church felt it should be dealt with publicly. The other half of the church felt that it shouldn't be dealt with. It was a private matter between him and his wife. Now, thankfully, him and his wife worked through it. There was forgiveness given, and they're still married today, and they went on with that. But how the leadership handled that situation set the tone for Anchor for years to come. When I came in 2010, this happened back in 1994, 95, may not have that exactly right. People still talked about it like it had happened yesterday. And and when the leadership failed to do anything about it, deal with it any way whatsoever, it harmed the church. And there were years getting over that. So any organization rises or falls on its leadership. Leadership in the church is the most difficult type of leadership because you're working with volunteers, not employees. Bill Hybels, who led the Willow Creek Church up in Barrington, Illinois, for many years, a large congregation. I heard him speak at a leadership conference, and he gave this illustration. He said, being a minister in a church is tougher than being the president of the United States. And, of course, everybody said, oh, you got to be kidding, you know. And his point was this: the president of the United States or a CEO or someone has that authority that they can tell people what to do, and they will do it. In the church, you all are volunteers, except for Robert and Justin here, all right? And I can't tell John what to do and expect him to do it. And if he doesn't do it, I can fire him. It doesn't work that way in the church. And his whole point was it's the most difficult leadership in the world because you've got to get people where they want to follow. And they're inspired to follow rather than following out of fear or intimidation or whatever of authority. Which leads to the next point there in my introduction. There are two types of leadership: positional leadership and earned leadership. Positional leadership is that leadership with the title. Okay? And you can have a title as an elder, you can have a title as a deacon, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're leading. A title, but that can give you authority. Yeah, you can make decisions that's going to impact the church. Okay? But just that position doesn't make you, the title does not make you a leader. The second type of leadership is earned leadership. And that is much more an effective way to lead than a positional title of leadership. As a delicate balance, the chief alluded to it there. He had earned leadership among the troops. He didn't have the positional leadership. He didn't have the title, but he had the earned leadership. They looked at his life. They wanted to follow where he was leading. So as leaders in the church, boy, that is so important. That the people see you, respect you. Doesn't mean they're always going to agree with you. And we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. Doesn't mean they're always going to agree with you. But they will respect that. Let me share a situation in my other church that we had. We had a situation where we had a worship minister. I I'd been at this church 13 years as youth minister, and the senior minister resigned, and then I was brought on to be the senior minister of the church. And we had just built a new building under the leadership of the other minister, and we transitioned into the new building, and we had a worship minister that just would not, he was hard to motivate, let me say it that way. And he, when I became leader, and we just had a beautiful auditorium, beautiful building. I told people we built the building, but we did not build the church. And there's a big difference there. You can build a building next door, but that has nothing to do with building the church. And so we made some transitions in worship style and things. And the worship minister wasn't on board, make a long story short. And I don't think he was capable of being on board. And we came to the point where we knew he was going to have to move on. And we talked to him and said, I'll call him Joe, that's not his name, but Joe, you need to, start looking to find another ministry, because we're going a different direction than you can take us. And that was in October of one year, and by May of the next year, he still had not done anything. And at that point, we were trying to be helpful for him and his family, respect his family. It's not easy to go from one ministry to another. So anyway, trying to make a long story short, I went in the hospital with open heart surgery. Unexpected, did not plan that. While I was in the hospital, something happened in the church with this, and the elders sent a letter out to the congregation saying, Joe's going to no longer be the worship minister here. Well, that was quite a shock to the congregation, to some people in the congregation. And he read a Bible school class, and he was a good teacher, and led a Bible school class. And that Bible school class, about 30, 40 people, were up in arms. And they wanted to know why. And the chairman of the elders, Joy McDonald, military man, taught me a great lesson in leadership. He said, okay, we can tell them why. And they called a meeting, open meeting. All the elders set up in the front of the meeting, unified as a group, and let the people ask questions. That was not a comfortable thing, but they just simply answered the questions and shared the information with them. This is why. Not knowing what's going to happen. And it was an amazing thing. After that meeting, and after the reasons were shared, all the dispute just went away. And we didn't lose anybody in the church over it. Okay? Because Joy was willing to stand up and lead, and said, good or bad, no matter what you think, I'm going to share with you. And it was a great example in leadership of standing up and leading, not by authority. Now, there was a certain authority there when you had all the elders up there together, but he was so well respected. This is my point. He was so well respected as a man in the congregation and the community that when they heard the explanation, they were willing to follow him because of the quality and the character of who he was. So leadership is important. So here's some things that I've seen. I broke it down into 3 groups that I think are essential for leaders in the church. They're essential for us here at Anchor. Okay? First, the life of the leader. A leader lives a life worth following. 1 Corinthians 11:1. Paul says this, and it's interesting. I made this outline, and then to be honest with you, I went back and found the scriptures. It kind of surprised me. Wow, there's a lot of scriptures that go along with this, which I was glad for, because I hate to make a list and they had no scriptural support. But here we are. a leader lives a life. The Apostle Paul, I consider him a pretty good leader. And did a lot of amazing things. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Wow, what better statement can you have? And we need to have lives that are worth following. Why? Because we follow who? The example of Christ. Philippians 3:17, Paul says, join together in following my example, brothers and sisters, and just as you have us as a model, keep your eyes on those who live as we do. And in some ways that sounds like Paul's bragging there, right? Look at me, live the way I do. But if you look at Paul's life and the things he went through and all he did, I don't think he's bragging here. I think he's saying, look, I've lived through a lot. And I understand the ups and downs. And I want you to live a life like that. To follow the example of Christ. So we as leaders, that is so important. So important. Not just here on Sunday morning, but out in the community. Every day of the week, no matter where you're at, whether you're in the mall or at the theater or wherever. I just think it's so important that leaders live a life. We had a guy up north that was an elder, and he was also worked for a construction company, a road construction company. And one day he was out in front of our house, and they were redoing the street out in front of our house. And I went outside and said hi to him or something, and saw him out there. Well, while I was out there, something was going on, and he just started cussing a blue streak to all his workers. It wasn't just one word. I mean, it was... And I was just dumbfounded. I was the youth minister at that time there at the church. And another time I went up to his house, because he had a couple kids in the youth group, and went to his house, and he was the same way up there. And just, be honest with you, he shocked me. And he was no longer, when his term got over as an elder, I could no longer support who he was because of that. And because his example didn't live up to the position that he held. And so I think it's so important, no matter where we're at, always keep that in mind. You're an example of Christ wherever you're at. Be a leader, gain strength through humility. The chief talked about that. I won't talk a whole lot about that, but Paul, in Acts 20, verse 19 says, I served the Lord with great humility and with tears and in the midst of severe testing by the plots of my Jewish opponents. Humility is important. We all need to be humble. We need to have, understand who we are. We need to understand that we're in a leadership position, but you can humbly lead rather than lording over or acting like you're better than everyone else. How many of you like to follow someone who they just give an air of, oh, I'm better than you? None of us do. A leader is lonely at times. 2 Corinthians 11:23, here again from Paul. Are they servants of Christ? I'm out of my mind to talk like this. I am more. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. Okay? That may not be in the elder's job description or deacon's job description, but there's times in the church that you're lonely because you have to make decisions that may not make everyone happy. Okay? And I've been there before. And if you've led in any position, you've been there before. But here's where my heart is. It is more important to make a decision for the good of the church and the kingdom. That's the right decision. than it is to make a decision that makes everyone happy. And when that happens, trust me, you are a very lonely person at times. And that's going to be, sometimes as a board or as a group of leaders, you're a very lonely group. But if you can stand before God and say, I think I did what was right according to the Word, according to who He is, then trust me, in the long run, you will still be respected by the people. But boy, that's not fun when you're in that position to make a decision. I admire, here again, none of you were a part of this. Rocky, if Rocky was here as an elder. He's been an elder ever since I've been here. But in the early days of my ministry here at Anchor, when I came, Anchor was a very good, friendly church. But they had not made any decisions that would change anything for a while. Jerry Williams, great guy. I love Jerry. I still miss Jerry, who was the minister who served before me. All right, pastoral heart par excellence. I learned a lot from Jerry on pastoral ministry. But he was not the type that wanted to make any decision that would ever make anyone upset. So they just basically had church. And they went through each week, and if somebody was upset about something, they'd change it to make sure everybody was happy, which is almost impossible. But when the elders brought me on, we decided, well, we need to make some changes, and tried to make some changes gradually. I remember the discussion one of the elders meeting when we talked about making some changes in the direction of music, that we weren't going to do all hymns and things like that. And Charlie Starkey and Marty Martindale were two elders then, and they were the oldest men on our board. And they both had come from churches up in Indianapolis, Indiana, large churches up there. And Charlie especially. Charlie would say, you know what? If we want to move forward as a church, we have got to go this direction. Now, personally, Charlie would have been very happy with just having hymns every Sunday played on the piano and organ. But he knew that to go to the next step, to move forward, to reach out to the next generation, we were going to have to change that some. And I remember that decision because I knew it was not going to be a popular one. And when people come up to you in the hallway, none of you have ever had this done, I'm sure. People come up in the hallway and share their opinion about something. Dennis, has that happened to you at all as an elder here? And when people come up and share with you their opinion on something, and it goes against what the decision was or where we're at as a church, that can be a lonely. But you have to go back and say, all right, what is best for the kingdom? What is the right decision, not just the popular one? So, and when you make those decisions, it can be lonely at times. Before we go to the next section, we'll just do any questions or comments or observations or things in these things that you've experienced or learned over the years in various leadership areas. Bill, you had the privilege of serving in Washington, D.C., which is an interesting dynamic, I am sure. Do you ever see the difference between positional leadership and earned leadership? Yeah.
It's quite interesting. The person that led was very humble, did not want to be recognized, was more private about how he did it and how he went about it and what he achieved. And it just went to show that that's the one that I felt more successful
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's look at the authority of a leader, because there is a certain authority in leadership. All right. First is a leader follows Jesus. Jesus said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." I remember I was at a conference, some of you heard me tell this story, but I was at a conference, Iron Sharpens Iron, we went up to a conference earlier this year on Iron Sharpens Iron. The speaker, I'll never forget this, he said, Jesus never once asked anyone to be a leader. But he asked first that we all become followers. And you read through the Gospels, and you'll see that is so true. Jesus does not ask any of us to be a leader, but he's asked all of us to be followers of him. And my contingency is, at one time I wanted to write a book, and I still have all the scriptures and the 9 things that I put together on that. And it's called Followership Training. If we're to be good leaders, we must first be good followers. And a good follower of Christ is the example that needs to be held up there. Excuse me. So a leader follows Jesus. Secondly, a leader does not lord over people, but rather seeks the Lord with people. Intentional play on words there. A leader is not lord over people, but rather seeks the Lord with people. 1 Peter 5, 1 through 4. To the elders among you I appeal as a fellow elder and as a witness of Christ's sufferings, who also will share in the glory to be revealed. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you are willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve, not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade. There's several leadership dynamics in there. First, Peter is writing this, and he refers to the chief shepherd, follow Christ. He is the one, as leaders, the elders, they are to follow Christ. And then he reiterates some of those things I think that the chief was talking about. I love that first point he made about love your people. Love your people. It's not about you. It's about those that you're trying to lead. And what are you going to do to help them be the better people? And not lording over people, but serving as examples to the flock. I don't know. That's just so important as leaders in the church, that we don't lord over them. What happens in the church when you try to lord over someone? What do you think? In our culture today.
Tell me what to do.
Yeah, don't tell me what to do.
They quit.
They quit. If they don't like what's going on in here, are we the only church in town? No. There's plenty of churches in town. And I'm going to get ahead of myself, but I'll go ahead and do it. I've been in situations where people have kind of threatened, well, if you don't change this or you keep doing it this way, then I'm just going to go to another church. And I'll give you this as my classic answer, because you're probably going to have people say that to you one time or another. I would say, you know what? If you don't feel that if you're not growing here, if you're not growing spiritually in the Lord, if you're not being fed, you know what? The most important thing in your life is that you grow and that you're spiritually fed. And if that's not happening here, then maybe going to another church is what you need. So I hope that can happen here. We can agree to disagree, and that's okay. But I'm more concerned about you spiritually. And if you sitting here is not doing anything for your spiritual growth, in fact, keeping you from growing, then I hope you'll go somewhere else for your own good, for your own spiritual growth. And people are usually shocked when you say that to them, because they think the ultimate threat to any church leader is, I'm going to go to another church, because you don't want to lose anyone. No, you don't. But if that's what they come at you with, I'd encourage you always to give that answer. You know, if you're not growing spiritually here, if this is hindering you, then by all means, you need to do what's better for you spiritually. And we don't want to get in the way of that. You know, I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but that's where I've landed. And usually that breaks the walls down, and I've had very few people ever leave because of that. Didn't mean we always agreed about things, but I'd much rather someone come up to me and honestly share with me how they feel about something than tell everyone else rather than me. You know what I mean? And it's just much easier to deal with. But some people are afraid of coming to the minister and talking to them and disagreeing with them. Some aren't at all. But when you have those conversations, you know, you kind of learn to expect them sometimes. And the key goes back to loving the people. I have found this over the years. People will put up with stuff they don't like if you know you love them. When I took over as the senior minister at the church up north, I'd been there 13 years as youth minister, and I preached the evening services for 3 or 4 years leading up to that, and I had good relationships with the people. And when they made this transition, I was 37, 38 at that time. A lot of people didn't trust, they trusted me, but they thought I was way too young to be the senior minister, because the senior minister that stepped down was, I don't know, he was 67, 68, 70, somewhere in there. And no, he had to be about 70. And when we started making some changes, what I found was, since the people trusted me and they knew I cared for them, they were able to put up with some other stuff they didn't like. Does that make sense? You know, and that's so important in the church, that we build those relationships, and the people, you know that, you know, when they're in the hospital or where there's a crisis in their family or whatever, even though we might disagree over what songs they like or don't like, or they don't like the way we approach something financially or whatever, if they know you love them, then all of a sudden some of that stuff goes away to the wayside. So don't lord over the people, but love them. And that goes a long way. Won't take care of all your problems, but it goes a long way towards promoting harmony in the church. Next one, a leader is a servant. Paul says this also: in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature God did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but rather he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. A servant's heart is so important, that the people see you, and I see this all the time here at Anchor. We're at a fellowship dinner or something needs to be done. Everybody picks up the chairs and moves the tables and sweeps the floor and does whatever. People, and trust me, people watch for that. Because I've had people say, you know, well, I noticed that so-and-so does this or doesn't do that. And it's so important that when we're here doing something and we have a dinner or something, you know, I have no problem with running the vacuum cleaner or moving chairs or why. One, it's just kind of my nature, but two, that's being a servant leader. I will never ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself, no matter what the task is. And that's yeah. Well, you know, I've been known to break a few things along the way. I'm going to use AJ as an example here. Put AJ on the spot. AJ is a great servant leader. He got here at 8:30 this morning, and he came in and said, "Hey, what do you need set up for this morning?" He came here. I said, "I thought I'd make some coffee," and then I said, "I don't think there's much." And then it hit me, you know, this would be much better around tables than just sitting in pews. So AJ set up these tables, arranged the chairs, you know, things like that. And AJ, I appreciate that in you. You are a great example of being a servant. And thank you for that. And just be honest with you, you know, we talk about, here's another thing about leadership I haven't talked about. Not all of you here have a positional leadership position, even though you're leaders. This is one thing I've learned over the years. You don't bring someone into a position like elder or deacon hoping that they will rise to that position. Well, if we make him an elder or we make him a deacon, maybe he'll step up and live up to his potential. I never have seen that work. If they're not already doing it, if they're not already there, they're not going to do it by just being given a title. All right? So that's very important. When I was youth minister, it doesn't matter if it's elder or deacon, I do it with my youth sponsors. If I didn't see them having some leadership before they had a position, and I would bring on people, and my mistake was I would bring them on, put them in a position of leadership without bringing them along and mentoring them into that positional leadership. There's nothing wrong with recruiting someone and saying, "Hey, will you help with this? Can you help be an assistant? Can you help do that?" But I've learned the lesson not to put someone directly into that leadership position if they haven't already been doing those type of things. So it's another thing I don't have down on the paper, but I've learned over the years I've seen. So a leader is a servant. D, a leader supports the church financially. Malachi 3:10, that passage, "Bring the whole tithe in the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." The reason I bring this up is because when we went through the building program here, if you remember, I'm sure the leaders remember this, I asked the leaders to first make a commitment, and so that then we didn't reveal anybody's individual commitments. I don't have any idea what any leader's individual commitments were, because I don't ever see that, and don't ask to see that. But I felt it was important that as the congregation would see, as a leadership, they've committed X amount of dollars as a group to build this new building. Because if the leaders are not supporting the church financially, who in the world are we to ask anybody to give anything else to support it? Besides that, the whole biblical teaching on giving and the blessings and all that, which we'll be going through in November as a congregation. So I think that's important. I've served on a couple of different partnership teams with Restoration House Ministries as a leader of the new church plant team. And when I first was asked to go on the team, it was just to be a member. And then I was asked to lead one of the teams. And I felt I can't lead this if the church isn't supporting it, all right, financially. And they did up north, and that's the Anchor has also. And I think it's just important to do that, because if you have an investment in it, then it becomes more real to you. Finally, function as a leader. And next week we're going to look at specifically the duties of elders and deacons, and many times they look at those things as functions, and those are important. We're going to look at the mission, the vision of the church. We're going to look at some of those logistical type things and what all that means. But there are other functions of a leader that aren't spelled out in those type of job descriptional type things. First, a leader shares the why, not just the how. Right? Shares the why, not just the how. This is a leadership lesson learned for me. When I was a minister at the other church, we cast a vision of, we were landlocked. We had a property kind of on a main drag, kind of like Tamiami, but we had one city block, basically. And it's actually a half a block, the way it was divided. But the church building was there, and the entire perimeter was parking lot. There was very little green space on that. So the church was landlocked. We had bought some lots across the street and turned those into parking lots, and soon those were full. And when we would bump 700 on Sunday morning, we had people driving through the parking lot, not finding a place, and leaving. Okay? And so what do you do with that? Make a long story short, cast the vision of having a second campus. The whole concept of two campuses, one church. We had one board of elders, one staff, 2 locations, one church, 2 locations. Very popular now. Back then it was not. It was just strange ideas. And make a long story short, we went through the whole process of starting a second campus. And the mistake I made in leading that is and especially as we got to the point where the decision was made and we were actually putting it in a process, I got so focused on the how are we going to do this? What are the logistics? How much square footage are we going to need in the new building? How are we going to fund this? How are we going to transition a group from the congregation to go out and start the other congregation? I got so wrapped up in the hows that I did not emphasize the why. And it got to the time that we launched that, we had like 100 people leave from what we called the main campus to go out and become a part of the new campus, the Southwest campus, we called it. And it was off to a good start, but we had not emphasized the why enough. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to reach Southwest Springfield. It's the growth area of the community if we're going to continue. And if we want to continue to grow on this campus, this will free up space. It will free up parking, blah, blah, blah. There were a lot of whys. I knew the whys, but I did not communicate them well, and the leadership did not communicate them well. So we started the campus, but it did not flourish like we hoped it would. It went well, it went okay, but neither campus really blossomed after that. And that was a big lesson to me. That's why when we built this building, I kept trying to say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? It's to reach the community. It's to reach people. It's to have space so we can bring people in. Hopefully we communicated that well. And now we've got to continue. If you probably haven't gotten the church paper yet, but on the inside column of the church paper, I put an article this week about the church the financial report, and this is the preliminary ramp up to our emphasis we're going to have in October and November and the rest of this year. But I gave some of the statistics. This was how much money we needed, or this is how much money we brought in, this is how much we had, this is our loan value, this is where we're at, this is what we're projecting. And in the last 2 lines of that article, if you make it that far through it, you'll say, all the above, though, is really not, this whole thing is not about money. It's about reaching people for the Lord. And that's why we're doing all this. And we've got to continue to put that out there. This morning there was a life group that met over there that was an outgrowth of something else. This Wednesday night we're going to start a second adult class. We used to have adult classes, 2 but would have one in here and one right on the other side of those curtains. That wasn't the best way to do it. We can, just the why. Why? It's a ministry tool to reach people for Christ. And we've got to keep that in front of them. That is the real reason we built that building. Okay. A leader does the right thing, not just the easy thing. I've kind of talked about that already. My heart is what is best for the church and the kingdom. Even if that means, the chief alluded to that, but when I came to the end of a 28-year ministry in Springfield, it wasn't because the church was tired of me and they were pushing me out, but I'd felt that I'd reached my level of effectiveness in leadership. And I honestly felt it wasn't fair to the church, and the potential was there, because some people had gotten the idea, well, he's just going to hang around until he retires. And I didn't want that mindset there. And there's a lot more in behind that, what the Lord did and things. But what is best for the church and the ministry? And even as leaders, if the elders here come to the point where they say, having Jeff on as the senior minister is not what's best for the church, that's one of those tough decisions that has to be evaluated and has to be what is best for the church. And hopefully that's not where you're at, because I really love it here. But it's not about me. It's not about you. It's not about making Joe Blow happy so they'll come every Sunday. It's about what is best for the church and the kingdom of God and honors Him. That has to be the overarching principle by which we operate as leaders in the church. Not the easy thing always. See, a leader communicates with others. This is probably the biggest challenge in the church, because when you don't communicate, people wonder what's going on and what are you hiding. Even if you don't have anything to share. That's the interesting dynamic about that. Even if you don't have anything to share. We've had some people, well, why aren't the elders publishing their elders' minutes? Or why are they, and well, there hasn't been a whole lot transacted. I'm talking about the whole building process. Nothing's changed over the last couple months, really. But they're thinking, oh, well, what are they hiding? What's going on behind it? What's really going on? Communicate. Communication experts or advertising experts will tell you that someone has to hear the message 7 different ways before it gets through to them sometimes. And that, I'll be honest with you, I'm not always good at communicating. Because, in my mind, I've told you once, what else should I have to say? But people don't always hear what we think they hear.
Sometimes people say, when are we going to start worshiping next door in our new building?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when we're come close to, when are we going to start meeting? Never once had we ever said that we were going to use that as a worship center. But when are we going to start having services over there? It's kind of like, That's just reality. You can't change it, but we've got to communicate. Even when there's nothing to communicate, nothing new, we still need to communicate. All right. D, a leader is a part of a team that supports the decisions of the team once the decision has been made. This is very important for any board or organizational leadership team, wherever it might be. You don't always agree as a group on something. And I don't have a problem with that. But when there's a group of leaders, especially in the church, and once the decision is made among that leadership team, that becomes the team's decision, and it's got to be supported outside that meeting. The worst thing a leader can do is go out and someone comes to you, well, why in the world did they decide to paint the building brown over there? I think that's the dumbest thing. And then the leaders, and we didn't discuss this in the elder. That's not an elder's decision. But the worst thing would be is, yeah, I know. I was in that meeting. They were all for, I think it's the stupidest thing they ever did. That is the worst thing you can do as a leader, as a group. When you make a decision, you own decision, you support the decision. Even if you personally may not agree with it, you're a part of a team, and that team decision is the direction you're going to go. I'll guarantee you, if you have a leadership team where decisions are made and people from that leadership team go out and then share a different opinion, you're going to have problems. I've seen it. You're going to have problems. E, a leader deals with differing ideas gracefully. All right. Isn't it great that everybody always agrees on everything in the church? No, it's not going to happen. I've always tried to approach it when people come within, we've had this discussion in staff, you know, when someone comes with a differing opinion about something, first you ask the question, well, is there a validity to what they have to say? Is there something we can learn from this? And sometimes you have to step back and, well, you know, there's a point here. Sort through that. Well, is there a validity here? What can we learn from that? We understand this disagree, but here, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And they may or may not understand that. They may or may not disagree with it. I've had discussions right out here under the canopy with people who, we still have a group of people, I'm not sharing anything Robert doesn't already know, that still think we should have all hymns every Sunday. Okay? And I've explained to a couple of people, so, well, you know, I appreciate that, and I like, you know, hearing the hymns every now and then too, but, you know, we're really trying to, here's the response, we're really trying to broaden our outreach to a broader base of people. Not everybody likes the hymns, and especially in our culture, even my age, the baby boomers down, have not grown up with those hymns. And if we want to connect with as many people as possible, we think it's important for that base to be broadened. And, you know, and I explain it. They may not agree with it. They may not. And I'll say the opposition to that has greatly gone down once we started talking about here's why. And I appreciate maybe some of you, but I appreciate so much. I'll just give Jerry Sullenberger as an example. You know, and Jerry's told me, he said, well, to be honest with you, I like the hymns and like that. But we've got to reach more people, and we've got to reach others, younger generations for the Lord. And if that means we sing different songs, then so be it. Personally, he'd like this or that. And I appreciate that heart. I appreciate that vision. And when people come to us with differing ideas, you know, well, had a lady up north and her husband, they were German and combative. This guy was not happy unless he had something to argue with you about. You ever known one of those people? That was recreationally, that's what he did, I think. You'd see him on the evening news sometimes in Springfield at a city council meeting or whatever, just taking the opposite view. And he'd come up and he'd say something, and sometimes the only thing I could say is, well, you know what? I've never thought about it that way before. That's a unique approach. And you couldn't argue with it. You couldn't, you know, because you might as well go beat your head against the wall, you know, because you're never going to reason with it. You're never going to give logical explanations. And so, well, I appreciate you sharing your opinion. I never thought about it that way before. You know, let me think about that. And sometimes that's all you can do. And still respect the person even though you disagree with them or they disagree with you. You can't control the way they treat you, but you can control the way you treat them. And treat them with respect, treat them with grace, and always share, well, this is why. They may not accept it, but at least they know there's a reason. rather than it's a personal thing. I don't like you, that's why we're doing this, to just irritate you. That won't go over well. Well, finally, a leader encourages others. I think that's so important. Just a positive word. It doesn't always have to be formal. It's just, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Glad you're here. And as leaders, you need to be working the crowd on Sunday mornings, all right? You need to be out there among the people. You need to be interacting with them. They need to know who you are and things like that. And that just encourages people. And leaders are encouragers. Okay. Whew. All right. That's a lot to throw at you, an hour and a half. But I think those are some good qualities of leadership. Comments, questions? We're 3 minutes past time here. So, comments, questions? Appreciate you all. I am not good at letting you know that enough. But I do appreciate you and what you do. And those of you that were asked to come to this because we see in you potential leadership. I'll say that. Our selection process here at Anchor is at Anchor in the elders meetings. We have discussions about who are some people we see that have some of the qualities that are needed. And we've asked you to come and be a part of this because that's the case. And knowing that not everybody's going to say, yes, I want to lead in a position, but prayerfully we hope that you will consider one of the positions we have. So thank you for being here. Next Saturday, we'll be here after the men's breakfast. Come at 8 o'clock. We're going to have the men's breakfast. And then after the men's breakfast, we'll come back over here and we'll do this. And that's when we'll get some more of the specifics of the role of an elder, role of a deacon, and job descriptions, what our mission, what our vision is, what that means to the future of the church, and just some of the logistical things of leadership. Okay? All right. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for today that you've given us, and I thank you for these guys here, Lord, and for the time we've been able to share together. Help us, Lord, to be the leaders you want us to be, and that your church will move forward strong as a result of you using us in whatever way you need to use us. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Thanks a lot.